Hi, and welcome to We're on ECMO, a video series for the ECMO community. And today I have with me Jonathan Emling, the program coordinator for ECMO, cardiac shock, or cardiogenic shock, and temporary mechanical circulatory support at Ascension Saint Thomas West in Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks for joining me today, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me, Neil.
Appreciate you being here. And my question for you today is, what are some of the things that you troubleshoot when caring for an adult patient on VA ECMO with a balloon pump and or a VAD?
Yeah, so a lot of different directions we could take that. One thing, we'll say I'm walking on to a shift and I've never encountered this patient before in my life, and I got VA ECMO and balloon pump or a VAD. I want to know why that balloon pump or VAD was placed. So generally you run into two different situations. One is where they have the balloon pump or VAD placed for cardiogenic shock and it wasn't enough support, so we've upgraded to ECMO. That's a pretty common scenario. The other common scenario we see is they've been placed on ECMO first, and the LV has started to distend, and they place the balloon pump or the VAD in an effort to mitigate some of that LV distension and promote cardiac recovery. So that is an important distinction, because a lot of times if they've just placed that balloon pump or VAD right after ECMO went on, I really worry about as they decompress the LV, as they empty out the lungs, we can get a lot of central aortic hypoxia where we were just getting flow up the aorta retrograde from the ECMO. Maybe we were all good when the aortic valve wasn't opening. Now we got that balloon pump, we got that VAD. It's promoting aortic valve opening, and probably that blood in the lungs is not too happy. We're not getting good gas exchange. So I always want to kind of know, how long ago was this placed? What are our saturations from our right radial artery or upper arm, or even our knees, maybe on our forehead? What have they been trending? And if they are having central aortic hypoxia, generally, we don't necessarily want to turn the settings on the balloon pump or the VAD down and let that LV distend again. Generally, we're going to at least try to increase vent settings to mitigate that and oxygenate the brain. So, what are our vent settings? Can we increase those if we're having issues, or do we maybe need to make a call to the attending and say, hey, this just isn't working. We're maxed out on our vent settings. They're still not oxygenating in their upper body. Those are all good things to understand when you're coming on. And then for that second scenario where they go on ECMO, the LV distends out, and they place the balloon pump or VAD, obviously you want to know, is this thing working? Is the LV effectively decompressed? And there's a number of different modalities we can use to determine that. I'm a big fan of PA catheters in all of these people once we've got the ECMO VAD combo going on, because you get your PA diastolic or your wedge pressure, which can kind of tell you about the filling status of that left ventricle. Generally, we shoot for a PA diastolic, less than 20, 25. Ideally, your wedge is less than 18, but if it's less than 20, I'm typically feeling pretty good about it. But it's all going to depend on the patient's, cardiac physiology, kind of what's going on, the LV size also. And that's where different modalities of imaging come in. Checking the chest x-ray, seeing if that cardiac silhouette is larger or smaller than the previous day. Ideally, if we place this thing, we want to see that cardiac silhouette kind of decrease in size. And then I think people are really realizing the utility of echo in these people. Echo can tell us how big the LV is, whether there's blood stasis from smoke. A lot of times before they get the balloon pump or VAD, we're looking at the pulse pressure in the aorta. I think ELSO recommends a pulse pressure greater than 10, but just because you have a good pulse pressure doesn't necessarily mean you're decompressed either. Sometimes these people with big dilated LVs can have a decent pulse pressure, but you stick the echo probe on and, the doctor still sees a lot of smoke in that LV, and we are worried about thrombosis in the cavity. So that's something to think about. And that leads me into the next point with a balloon pump. I always worry a little bit and really educate our specialists when they have a balloon pump as an LV vent to actually put that balloon pump in 1 to 2 every hour and assess whether the aortic valve is truly opening. It's easy to kind of get lulled into a false sense of security when you look at the arc line waveform and you see the balloon pump making the waveform up and down. But really, there's always the risk of that balloon pump not effectively decreasing the afterload on the LV. It can just be inflating and deflating, and your aortic valve isn't opening, and that's a recipe for disaster, thrombus in the left ventricle and the aortic root maybe. So always making sure, even though you see a nice waveform from the door or from where you're sitting in the room, to really assess, what's the pulse pressure that's assisted with this balloon pump, and is that effectively allowing for the LV to empty out. Now for a VAD, sometimes you do see ECMO in conjunction with a heart mate if something's gone terribly wrong. But for VAD, I'm kind of going to refer to the Impella devices. And the Impella devices are nice in this situation because you can kind of titrate the degree to which you're unloading that left ventricle. And I'm always looking at, what P level are we on the Impella? Are we having any alarms? Suction alarms are common when we've got ECMO and an Impella going on, left-sided Impella. And a lot of times this can be due to one of two main issues. There's a number of issues, and I'm sure folks in the comments can, add in their perspective. But sure. When you get suction events on these Impellas, generally it's either due to underfilling of the left ventricle, and that can be due to just generalized hypovolemia, or it can be due to the ECMO flows being a little too high. Sometimes we might need to come down on the ECMO flows to allow for that blood to get over to the left ventricle and actually get pumped out by the Impella. We really don't want to leave an Impella suctioning for long. That can cause, hemolysis. It can cause arrhythmias if it's tickling the ventricle. So P1 to P2 is generally what we see on the Impella, which provides around 1 liter to 1.5 liters in most patients of unloading, which is plenty in an ECMO patient on full support. And then the other reason, other than generalized hypovolemia, when I say underfilling, obviously for blood to get over the left ventricle and into the Impella, you got to have a functioning right ventricle. So, just because we're having suction events doesn't necessarily mean our ECMO flows are too high. Sometimes you need the medical team to come over and just tinker a little bit, turn the ECMO flows down, see if that increases allows you to increase your Impella flows or resolve the suction. And if it doesn't, then you start suspecting maybe there's a component of right ventricular failure as well. That's when we start looking at maybe pulmonary vasodilators, a low dose inotrope to promote RV contraction. Those are kind of the troubleshooting steps that I think of when I'm in a room with a ECMO and a VAD, and the VAD the Impella is kind of alarming at me. Mm-hmm. And then finally, I want to know, are we weaning this? The nice thing about having a balloon pump or a Impella in an ECMO patient is it allows you to come off ECMO as long as that RV recovers to a certain degree. So, what are the orders for weaning? Are we taking serial steps down throughout the shift? Is it just as the physician team comes by? And regardless of that, after we've made some adjustments, which is typically coming down on ECMO flow and turning up the VAD flow, or just allowing the balloon pump to do its thing, is that going well? And that's going back to the point of assessing whether the LV is effectively decompressed. Again, we're looking at our filling pressures, our PA waveforms, our PA pressures, wedge pressures. If you have a balloon pump, is our pulse pressure increasing or decreasing? Are they tolerating the wean? Because that's when a lot of stuff can go wrong, when you're in this dynamic situation of turning one thing down and another thing up. And then depending on what device you got in, you might have different strategies of troubleshooting failure to wean. With the Impella, you may just need to turn the Impella up some. Typically your balloon pump's already on a 1-to-1 ratio. So maybe if that's not working, we either need to look at an inotrope to assist the ECMO wean, or maybe we need to upgrade from a balloon pump to some kind of Impella device or some kind of surgical LVAD, maybe even oxy LVAD that just drains from the LV and returns to the arterial system. So all this stuff, it gets into the realm of the cardiology and the surgeon's decisions, but they're really relying on the specialists at the bedside to catch these things early, have a constant eye on all of the different monitoring modalities we have, and let them know, hey, this is going well. Hey, this isn't working. Let's reconvene and figure out a different strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's a lot of information. I really appreciate that. I think it's very thorough, and being able to troubleshoot for the ECMO specialist really builds that confidence and helps in that teamwork, with the surgeons and everyone else and cardiologists. And I really think that ultimately, leads to better patient care, better patient outcomes. And so I really thank you for the generosity of sharing that expertise and offering to empower those who are caring for patients on ECMO. So I really appreciate that. If other folks wanted to find you on social media, see maybe, I know you put out some content every now and then, share, where would they go to do that?
So on Twitter, my handle is @Jonathan Emling. I tweet pretty sporadically, so you may or may not get your money's worth out of that. But I'm also on LinkedIn here. Maybe you could tag me. I have no idea how to give a LinkedIn handle.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I'll tag you just share. So,
or just check the ECMO Advantage comments. I feel like I'm commenting quite a bit because I like y'all's stuff and like engaging.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you. We really just have a desire for more people to know more about ECMO and it to be more widely available. And we know that there's lots of patients out there that can benefit from it, especially when people have the education that they need to care for them. So thanks again. Thanks to all those who tuned in to watch WE'RE on ECMO. If you have an ECMO topic that you would like to see addressed here, make sure you reach out to me, Neil, Neil, @ECMOadvantage.com. Thanks again.
Thank you.